Since we started the team, we have delivered over $500 million in incremental revenue. And that's not even necessarily accounting for some of the savings that we've also generated.
Welcome to the Experimentation Edge, where product managers, data scientists, and engineers talk about how they make smarter decisions. I'm Ashley Stirrup, the Chief Marketing Officer for Growthbook. And in each episode, I'll sit down with an executive to unpack how they use experimentation and A/B testing to make better decisions. This show is sponsored by Growthbook, the open source experimentation platform leader. Now let's jump in and get started with our next guest. Welcome to the Experimentation Edge. We're excited today to have Dave Massey, Head of User Research, Personalization, and Experimentation at UPS. And Dave, one of the things I think that's really interesting about your background is that you started it off on the digital side and then kind of walked into an interesting situation at UPS. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about all that.
Thanks, Ashley. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here and talk about my journey in experimentation. Before I came to UPS, I was on the advertising side and run experimentation through advertising. But when I came into UPS in 2016, so going on 10 years now, it was, conversion rate optimization, experimentation. It was really quite new to them as an enterprise, really. It's funny, the very first day I walked into the company, I got brought into a meeting where they were trying to decide on which A/B testing tool that they wanted to go with. I basically stood up and raised my hand because there were a lot of things that were kind of misconstrued about, what tools can and can't do and everything. And I kind of jumped up and raised my hand and they said, "Oh, you know how this works? Okay, so you get to play with it now, and also own it." So kind of moving from there, it was a slow go. We had a testing tool, Adobe Target, and we ran a test. I ran the very first test on ups.com. It was very, very tiny button change kind of thing. And then it kind of just fell to the wayside for a little bit because, other business things got in the way. And then cut to 2019, called in by some of our senior leaders. And basically, and I will say we had really great senior leadership and kind of believing, what could be done here. But they're like, listen, we hear this whole UX thing is probably something we should consider. But just like any big company, well, we need to prove that it's worth it, right? We got to make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze. And so with that, I was basically given the keys to run a pilot on testing out UX improvements to see if it could move the bottom line. I was given a big old dollar amount, revenue amount that I had to hit, and was given one other guy at UPS with me, and then some support from a vendor. And that was, kind of how I got dropped into it. But it turned out to work out really, really quite well because our first test pretty much met our revenue goals.
That's
It
pretty
was
incredible.
quite interesting. Yeah.
Usually you're not going to come out of the gates and your very first test is going to have that kind of results.
Right. Well, and full transparency, UPS, you guys can look up the SEC filing, but I mean, we do a fair, share of revenue. And this is something that even I had to kind of get my head wrapped around coming from the agency side of things. And I mean, I dealt with big customers anyway, like, Marriott and so forth, but the sheer volume that UPS does in business is remarkable.
Yeah.
And, so a 1% increase here or there at UPS, I mean, that is not couch cushion money.
That's right. And, in the years since you've been doing all this, you've been able to drive a significant amount of revenue for the company, right?
Yeah. So since we started the team, I mean, at this point, we have delivered over $500 million in incremental revenue. And that's not even necessarily accounting for some of the savings that we've also generated. But yeah, we know how to make some money.
That's pretty incredible. Have there been certain things that you've done in particular that have really, led to that kind of gain?
I was set up for success essentially when we started this pilot because when we started testing these things, I know a lot of experimentation teams, they'll run campaigns, right? And they'll run A/B testing on campaigns. And full transparency, that's what I did on the agency side, right?
Right.
But that's not where we started, right? We started in the shipping tool for UPS.com. So, in other words, the moneymaker for our digital channels. And we are looking at improving the interface in that tool and to see how that could help the bottom line. And that is where it was easier for me to kind of show that those gains versus through an ad campaign, to be quite honest with you.
Right. And you kind of applied some e-commerce best practices to that whole shipping experience, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I know most people don't think of UPS as an e-commerce company, right? But we do have a flavor of that because again, if you go and ship a package with UPS on ups.com, I mean that's e-commerce in every sense of the word, right? You've got a flow that happens there. You got a checkout, given it may not be something physical. I guess the label is physical, so you're buying a
Hmm.
label, really is what it boils down to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it in our shipping flow, when we started, it wasn't thought of as e-commerce at that point in time either. It was looked
Yeah.
at like,
Right.
hey, this is just a tool. No, no, it is e-commerce. So yeah, one of the first things that we did was apply like the most basic of e-commerce strategies to that checkout flow essentially for shipping. So
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes sense. Anytime you can find best practices from an adjacent industry,
yeah,
well, yeah, you want to take advantage of those. So you have a fun name for your team. Maybe you could share that and tell us where it came from.
I have to say it all out loud before I give you the acronym, but it's the Journey Experience and Design Innovation, or Jedi team. So, but it's J period E period D period.
That's funny.
I don't want the lawyers
Got it.
to get freaked
I
out on me.
understand. Well, but I hope the other groups, when they have a hard problem, they say, "Let's bring in the Jedi team." So,
That's 100%. That I mean,
yes,
we have actually over the years, we have created that sort of reputation within the organization. It's fun. It's like, hey, has Jedi tested it?
yeah,
So
that's
yeah.
great. That's great. So maybe you could tell us about that first test, maybe a little more detail on what you did there.
It wasn't rocket science. It was simply going again back to the basics of once a customer enters the checkout flow, you remove distractions. And so that's what we did. So, we basically removed navigation tools and stuff like that once somebody entered the shipping tool, to get them to, continue through the flow and not get distracted and go somewhere else, right? It's basic stuff. I was told before I launched the test that I was crazy. It wasn't going to help anything. And it was just going to make customers angry. Well, I did it anyway because one of the great things is I can say, listen, this is just a test. Like we learn from every single test. We learn what to do and what not to do, right? So there's no such thing as a bad test. So when we ran that first test, doing that increased conversion rate to the tune of around $35 million over the course of a year. So
Wow, that's incredible. And I imagine that really changed a lot of people's perspectives. When you have that
oh
first
yeah,
surprising result where people are convinced, oh, that's not going to help. And then suddenly it does. I assume it was a wake up call for everybody.
it was a wake up call, but I will say we had to defend it because showing a number like that right out the gate, everybody's like, "There's no way, we don't believe that." And to my team's credit, the data folks that we've got, and this is so critical for any experimentation team. You got to have the best data team you can afford. We had to defend it upside down and sideways. Have holes poked in it, everything else, and then when the dust settled, they're like, "Yeah, this is legit."
Yeah. And so I imagine you went on, you did a few more tests, and some were winners, some were losers. But
Yep,
I would imagine after you got your kind of your second win and your third win, people started to really think, oh, maybe we've got something here.
it's true, and I say a lot of times that the business now knows that they ignored Jedi at their own peril. There have definitely been things that we have tested that have come from senior leadership, and this is something that I also pride my team on, myself and my team, is being able to push back on our senior leadership, but with data, right? Because if you just go to a senior leader that has an idea like, hey, I want to do X, Y, or Z, and you say, well, that's just a terrible idea, well, you're just difficult to work with, right? But if you come back and say, okay, we tested your idea and it did not work well, but we learned these three other things that we can do to kind of accomplish the same goal. That changes that conversation. and it has made us really kind of the center of excellence when it comes to proving out what to do first and foremost for our customers, but also for the bottom line.
Yeah, that's great. And it's interesting thinking about UPS because, on the one hand, people weren't that familiar with A/B testing when you joined. You didn't have that culture, but you
Mhm.
did have a very data-driven culture there.
Very, yep, yep.
And so that's a rich environment for somebody to come in with A/B testing, show a new source of data, and get people excited.
We are an engineering company, like, at our core, so if you can't measure it, it doesn't matter. We had data all over the place, but that was also it was a blessing and a curse because that data lived in all sorts of different other places.
Yeah.
When I first walked in the door, we were using a data tool for UPS.com. They literally you open it up, you wanna run a report, and you come back after lunch and hope it's done, right? It was just not good. So
Yeah.
when we made the shift to a more modern sort of analytics tool, it made us that much faster. And just turns out that when we kind of launched this team as a pilot, that's also what was happening as well. So we were able to get that really granular data and kind of start connecting those dots. And it was really a game changer.
I can imagine because if you've got to run a report and wait an hour, it's pretty tough to be iterative. And
Yeah.
just coming back to e-commerce best practices again for a second, as
Mhm.
you've kind of continued to experiment, have you found a pattern where certain things from e-commerce really transfer over well, and other things you're like, no, UPS is different. Our use case is different.
That's a little bit of a hard question to answer only because we are testing humans, right? And humans are humans here, Europe, Asia, wherever it is, right? So we've got some tendencies that seem to, that are kind of baked into our DNA. And most of the things that we have looked at in terms of those, and I'll say UX patterns, not even necessarily e-commerce patterns, but just UX patterns that we know work with humans and around choice architecture, those sorts of things. Those standards, I mean, they apply to us as it would apply to any other e-commerce business.
And I would imagine, you've got a super wide range of users
Hmm.
where it's somebody who maybe ships a package once a year, and then somebody who works at a company who's in your tools all day long.
Yeah.
And so, like, their expectations and their use cases and what they're doing in the tool, I imagine, is pretty different.
Our primary customer on UPS.com and our digital channels really are the SMBs, right? We've got big enterprise customers, but they've got other systems kind of baked in that they use. You do have your kind of one-off occasional type of shipper, but everybody tracks, right? And that's one thing that does make it an interesting balance for how we do things. But this is also honestly, this is where we have the most opportunity moving forward is on kind of the personalization side of things and understanding who our customer is better and to give them the right experience at the right time because maybe one day they're showing up to ship something to grandma, right, for her birthday, or and the next day they're at their day job and they're the shipping manager. And so again, it's being able to kind of understand that, and that's where you know, experimentation and audience targeting come together.
You're supporting a pretty wide range of products there, right?
Last time I checked, there were almost 80 different customer facing applications that live on some sort of UPS digital property. I would love to be able to support absolutely all of them. We have a good sized team, but we can't support all those things. So we do kind of have to look at that customer and business benefit and we don't have an infinite dance card. So, we've got to kind of
Yeah,
prioritize that.
right. How big is your team?
So it depends kind of on the day, because things do shift up and down depending on what season that we're in. But between designers, data folks, developers, even, and our full time contract vendor, it's around 80 folks probably.
Yeah, it's a big team.
Yeah.
But for the size of a business at UPS, it sure feels small.
Yeah. I mean, for as big as we are, we could be twice that and still not be able to cover everything we want to cover.
Yeah. And so what's the model there? I mean, do you try to run everything centrally, or are you trying to empower the teams to do it?
So right now, we do run things centrally from the experimentation side. I would love, and very well may be a possibility of getting expanded in the larger part of the business. But the one thing I can say, even though we may not have decentralized the act of experimentation, we have decentralized the want and need for testing, because now
Yeah.
all sorts of different business units, and product teams are coming saying, listen, we want to test this, right? So the fact that we can't test everything that we want to test is great in my eyes, because that means, people understand it and understand the value of it.
Yeah. Could you tell us about a time when you ran a test that didn't work the way you expected and maybe you had some new learnings?
Oh yeah. I mean, for one, I can tell my team all the time, my gut is wrong more than it's right. I guess the senior leadership in the business they were really keen on getting some more customer information to kind of help us as a business serve them, right? And it was an instance where our shipping product team actually had a request in to build a functionality to require the recipient's email, right? So whoever you're sending a package to, having their email, make it a required field to complete that shipment. And we had real issues with this because, again, not necessarily everybody will have the other person's email or whatever, or don't
Yeah.
necessarily want to give it. And business is like, nope, nope, we need this so that we can get customer data and we can, retarget and blah, 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 all that good stuff. The product team was worried about it, and we ran the test, and it was today is to date the shortest test we have ever run. It was up for about 24 hours. We saw such a decline in conversion on shipping on .com that we pulled the plug on it. And
Yeah.
we went and we had to go back and tell the business, like, yeah, you can't, like, this is not something that is a good experience, and therefore it will cost us business. Now, cut to a couple years later, our international shipping team wanted to do the same thing, but they had a completely different reason for it. In terms of shipping cross border, customs is a big deal, right? And it costs people a lot of money, time, and effort in getting their shipments. And they came to us and said, hey, listen, we want to capture emails so that we can help with customs, because when something gets held up at customs, they don't go back to the shipper, they go to the recipient, right? They say, listen, you've got to deal with this. And at that point, when we would make it required for an international shipment, and we put in there, this is to help it get through customs, we saw no issue. Nobody had a problem
Yeah.
with it, because we gave them
Right.
the reason why. It's not just like, hey, we want this because we want this, right?
Yeah. And what's your approach in general if you have a test that fails? Like, when do you decide to iterate? How do you decide to kind of learn more about, okay, this failed, but why did it fail? That type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's our everyday, right? I mean, and like I said, there's no such thing as a bad test, because we learn one way or the other, right? If something completely goes the opposite direction of what our hypothesis was, then we back up and we honestly we go to the data and say, listen, okay, why did that happen? And getting to the why is incredibly useful. We've got a pretty high win rate. And part of that is because our UX research team and our experimentation teams are all under me. And so they all work together. And having the kind of voice of the customer along with those behavioral metrics gives you that real 360 view. And it's incredible because we can kind of anticipate more before we even get to the A/B testing side, because we've heard customers say, "Hey, this is a problem. This is not a problem." And when we do have one of those kind of, I guess I don't want to say a failure, right? But just something that didn't go the way we expected, we can go right back and talk to customers and ask them, hey, why do you think this didn't work out well for us? Right. So it's an incredible thing. And I got to tell you, I don't know. I've talked to a few other leaders of their experimentation programs and other companies. And when I tell them that we have our UX team kind of connected to the hip of our experimentation team, it kind of blows their mind. I'm like, well, I mean, to me, it seems like that's like
Yeah.
101. You would have to have that, right? Because, but that's just me. So
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. As you look forward, how do you see the experimentation program evolving at UPS?
I do hope we're able to have the technology where we can let other teams play, but still give them the best practices and standards that our team uses. My team at UPS is known for is the rigor that we go through setting up a test to make sure we're not, blowing anything up, breaking anything with IT, but also looking at the results and being as unbiased as possible because it's like, hey, we have no problem saying, hey, this isn't the right thing to do. Sorry, or it is the right thing to do. And kind of setting those standards for the rest of the organization, that I think is more crucial than anything. But beyond that, it's like we need technology that is simple enough for our business, other business units to be able to do this sort of thing. Because right now, I mean, it's, I've got a pretty heavy tech team to help us kind
Yeah,
of run these things.
right. AI is always top of mind with everybody. Are you thinking about ways to apply AI to the UPS experience?
Absolutely. In fact, UPS, being a kind of an engineering company at its core, we've been playing with AI since before it was really a buzzword. But yeah, my team as a whole look at it as a tool, right? It's not a replacement for anything that we do, and it's not. It is just something to make us more efficient. Get through results faster, those sorts of things. And it is we emphasize the human in the loop, right? So
Yeah,
there's nothing that AI generates that just you know do not pass go, right? It has to
right.
go through its checks, just like something that a human on our team would have to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. AI is such an interesting topic when it comes to experimentation because it literally has the potential to affect every step of the experimentation process from, the coding to
Mhm.
have I actually created my hypothesis correctly
Yep.
to what do these results actually mean? And then even the product itself could have AI in it. So
Yep.
it's pretty incredible all the different opportunities there are to apply AI to experimentation.
Yeah.
And it's interesting as I talk to a lot of different guests, people are all over the map on their journey, and some are really strong in one phase and some are really strong in another. And it's going to be pretty exciting as the whole thing comes together and the whole industry lifts up to another level. So,
Yeah, and that's where, I kind of mentioned that we really we want the technology to continue to improve so that again, we can expand this idea of experimentation throughout the organization.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
This was a fabulous episode. I feel like I learned a lot.
This was great. I really appreciate it, Ashley.
I'm sure you inspired a lot of people.
Well, I hope so.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this conversation, please support our channel by hitting the like button and subscribing. Better yet, share the episode with a friend. I'm Ashley Stirrup with Growth Book. We'll see you next time on the Experimentation Edge.